Shabbat Shalom. It is so wonderful to be here with you and wonderful to be given the microphone in the midst of this illustrious company. So while I do have the microphone, I'm just going to take advantage to start by saying Toda Rabah to everyone here, to Beit Shalom, to Rabbi Locketts and to Cantor Lipset Allison, who so beautifully have led this service today. And for Nancy and myself, it is such a wonder to be back home. This is such an extraordinary, extraordinary community, and it is just great to be home. And to be here on this extraordinary occasion, it is such an honor and a delight to pay tribute to our treasured friend and rabbi, Norman Cohn, and to do so with his treasured friends and rabbis. I have to confess, I have through the years been a little jealous. You go to a CCAR convention and you see these guys. They are so tight. They are so close and loving with each other. And their classmates, they graduated way before I did. But I must say one of the greatest delights for me was when I was made an honorary member of your class, which is getting an honorary degree, because their class had just such extraordinary people in that class, and it's a privilege to sit with four of them. These are accomplished rabbis who have changed our world for the better in more ways than you can count. So it's just an honor to be sitting here with them. Rabbi Cohn asked if I would serve as a David Susskind this evening, and frankly, I think I'm a little more Whoopi Goldberg, but we'll go with it. We'll try to go with it. Okay, maybe at least Barbara Walters, but we'll try to do that. And what's really exciting to do here is to take this opportunity, since I have the microphone, to ask them anything and everything that comes to my mind of interest over the course of all the years, the combined years of their careers that they have been friends and colleagues, and to learn from their experience and to chat with some rabbis who've really gained strength from each other, and who all have one thing in common for sure, and I include myself among them with this. We have in common our love and great regard for your rabbi, Norman Cohn. So let's get started. I gather that you were all in the same class at HUC, and that began in Jerusalem, that very first year of Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion, when you live in Jerusalem. And so I want to invite you to go back to that first year. And you had hair, but I can't hear. So if you go back to that first year in Jerusalem just for a moment, I'm curious to hear about how you all met and how you managed to gravitate towards each other, and what drew you to each other, and particularly what drew you to Norman Cohn.
I'm Stacy Offner. And I wish. I'm Mark Shapiro, Springfield, Massachusetts. I was attracted to Norman because he weighed 70 pounds when he was 22. And he was just so adorable. Actually, come to think of it, that's not a bad adjective to use for Norman, is it? He is kind of adorable and charming. He's always been that way, and whenever I think of him, I see him in that loving, lovable way. He doesn't weigh 70 pounds anymore, but still the same guy. I'm not going to talk about how we met, because I can't exactly remember. There were like 70 of us in that first year, and 52, but there were 18, another 18 that you didn't know. 22. Anyway, So Norman actually had the distinction of being able to remember all the names of the original, because as you know, Norman is very good with people, and for many, many years, Norman could rhyme off, even though we lost many, dropped out in the first day or so, Norman could name them all, because he's just that kind of a people-to-people person. We'll talk about that later.
I'm Stephen Bob from Chicago, formerly from Minneapolis. I got lost. Elliot and Norman and I were all in the same Hebrew class in Jerusalem, the Gimel Shtayim class. And we were the three people in the class who thought we were very entertaining. And we entertained ourselves, we entertained each other, and we sort of entertained the teachers too, more or less. And also, we helped each other through difficult times, and we shared the happy times. And that drew us together, one step at a time.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Elliot Strom from Philadelphia, and what I remember is right at the beginning of our school year, they took us on a tiyul, on a trip to the north of Israel. So we went up to the Galil, and we had some fascinating experiences, not all of which can be shared in a sanctuary. But what I remember about Norman from those years, those days, is I remember his energy, I remember his enthusiasm, I remember he always had a joke, I remember he always had a great smile that played across his face. But most of all, what I remember for real from that trip was wherever there was a crowd of people, wherever there were a bunch of people crowded together, something was happening, there was laughter, there was energy, and smack in the middle of that group was Norman. And I remember thinking, this guy I got to get to know. I think it was a mistake. And he's been that way ever since.
So can you recall back to the styles then, the dress styles, the hairstyles? What did he look like? What did you all look like then?
We all looked the same. We had long hair. Some of us had beards. You and I had beards, and we wore blue jeans and worn-out T-shirts, and we wore the same thing for 5 years. And then...
Only one of us had a Holy Cross T-shirt.
That is true. That is true. And then when interviews came up, which was April of 1977, or maybe late March, we all went and bought suits. And these are the suits we wore. We all looked identical until that very moment, and we all had three-piece suits, because in those days, 1977, everybody wore vests.
Wait a minute. Well, everybody. Wait, yeah. You only had men in your class?
We were the last class. We were. I'll never get that back from you now. We were actually the last class that was ordained with all men. We had begun with, I think, 3 women in the class, one of whom graduated and was ordained a year after us. The other 2 didn't make it through to the end. But as it turned out, we were the last class, and I feel that absolutely qualifies us as fossils. But I do, but I do want to share something this evening, because Mark is right. We did sort of dress in the uni of the day. But Stacy had said at one point, who did she think was the sharpest dresser? And I thought, well, that's hands down, that's your rabbi. And I have a photograph of what a sharp dresser, and I'm going to pass this around. And I'm not going to start it with Andrea, because it'll never go past her. But I'm going to ask you to share this. You have to figure out which one he is. But you can see everybody was drawn to his sharp look, very, very classy look. This is your rabbi in 1972.
While we're talking about clothes, Rabbi Cohen and I had a bet on a baseball game last week. And he bet on behalf of his childhood team, his constant team, the team he loves, the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I bet on behalf of the Chicago Cubs. Well, and the bet had to do with tonight's program. And Rabbi Cohn has agreed to wear a Chicago Cubs hat. Well, it's for Rabbi Cohn. All the rabbis wear Cubs hats in Hebrew. You've never looked better.
Well, that is a very beautiful, beautiful look, and I understand why you got the Best Dressed Award in rabbinical school. And now I think Rabbi Cohn gets the microphone.
Okay, I wore it. There's not enough hair. It's my kippah. My hat. Now, Simcha, I would have worn the hat longer, but it was just one game. Had it been a real series, I would have worn it longer.
In the first year in rabbinic school, Rabbi Cohn suffered a great loss. This is serious. And his childhood star, Roberto Clemente, died tragically in the first year in Jerusalem. And he was upset about it. And I think today he would tell you that our support got him through that moment. He was sad, and he was sad. He's still sad about it. But
what other rabbi has a picture of Roberto Clemente in my study? Most have pictures of the Rambam, of Rashi, of Isaac Mayer Wise. I've got Roberto Clemente.
we suggested that the rest of the teams in the National League, that the Pirates, because Roberto Clemente was such an outstanding player, should no longer have a right fielder. And that all the teams in the National League would agree not to hit the ball to right field, Zecher la Roberto, as a memorial to Roberto. We tried to propose it, but it didn't get anywhere.
So I know you were the class of the last class of all men, and I came later, but I am your dear friend, and there are challenges involved in being the dear friend of men like these men, but I try to do my best and kind of get with the program. So not to be outdone, I think I have to put this on myself. Ha ha ha! Ooh, now we got a series. I see. Okay, so Cubs, Mets.
Wait a second. We're both from Toronto. We don't even need the hat because the joy just exudes from our hearts and souls.
Anybody from Kansas City? No. Okay, so there we go. All right. And one thing that Rabbi Cohn pointed out, and you are always causing me to see things in new ways, that this is now the series of, these are all blue teams. We've got the Mets, the Cubs, the Royals, and Toronto. See, doesn't Rabbi Cohn, he does that. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on from Jerusalem. We're going from Jerusalem, and we're going to Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati. Cincinnati? Cincinnati? Cincinnati. You were all in Cincinnati. So I'm just going to go to Cincinnati for a moment and ask you, Rabbi Cohn, who was your favorite professor and why? Easy?
I had two favorite professors. Rabbi Hanan Brichto, anybody who's studied Torah with me knows, there isn't a class that goes by that I don't quote Rabbi Brichto, who had a way of looking at the Bible and a way of helping us to see it as a living document. And I have to confess that when I teach Torah, I think I've told some of you that, I sort of feel his presence on my shoulder, and I hear his voice in my ear. And very often when I come up with some interpretation. It's something that he had taught me so many years ago. But I also have a professor who's still alive, and that is Michael Cook, who taught New Testament and Christian studies, and that, of course, became my favorite subject, and it led me to, I think, what has been a major part of my work as a rabbi, interfaith work, and trying to understand the text of other people and trying to understand others as the creatures of God, and working together when we can, and learning together. And it's great to study the Jewish Bible with someone who brings a different perspective, and I like studying the Christian text with others and sharing my perspective on it as well. So Michael Cook and Hanan Brichto, may his memory be a blessing.
Beautiful, and as you speak so beautifully about your teachers who have moved you, I know that there are countless people who have Rabbi Cohn on their shoulders, and that you have been their teacher, and yeah, that's really the case. So moving from the sublime to the not quite, well, no, moving from the sublime to the sublime, I should say. Do you all play golf? None of you do. Who's a golfer here? You.
These two.
So I'm curious how playing golf has enhanced your relationship, or perhaps how not playing golf has enhanced your relationship.
I only play golf because of Norman. We were at a conference together at the University of Notre Dame 30 years ago, and there was a break in the afternoon, and I wanted to go to the Studebaker Museum, and Norman said, oh, there's a golf course here on campus. And I said, Norman, I don't know how to play golf. And he said, okay, we'll have a good time. And I said, Norman, it's 103. He said, that's good, no one else will be on the course. So he took me out to the course, and he taught me how to play golf as we played. And soon I'll learn. Well, we play golf in Wisconsin. We play golf we take usually after the holidays golf trip. I have to tell you, this weekend is interfering with our after the holidays golf trip. And we play golf and solve the problems of the world and the problems of our lives. The golf is the second most important part of the golf trip.
I once drove a golf cart for Rabbi Cohen, but that's as close as I got to golfing. My son did caddy for you. You also dehydrated him. It was another convention at 110, and my son, I don't know, it was like a long time. He was 10 years old or something. Yeah, he is better. Yes, he's okay now.
I've heard that you all like to do kunzes on each other. So what's your favorite kunz on Norman?
I can't tell it.
Yeah, better define.
Play the tricks, practical jokes. Practical jokes. So Rabbi Steve Bob can't share his with us. Oh, but he'll tell one.
Yes. Many of our teachers in rabbinic school were inspiring and brought us to the text us, and there were some who might have retired before we got there if they had been wiser. So there was one in particular teacher whose name I won't mention, who may once have been a great teacher, but at the time we arrived, the world had passed him by, and he hadn't noticed. So we went to class because we had to go to class, but there was no way we were going to learn anything. So we used to play around in the class. One day Norman took off his shoes, and I was sitting behind him, and I took the shoes away from him, and I went over at the window, there was a window shade, and I tied his shoelace to the end of the window shade, and then when he wasn't looking, I untied the shoelace, and I pushed the window shade out the window. It was pouring, and Norman wanted to know what I had done with his shoe, and I told him, I pointed out the window, and he was upset. and I said, Norman, I thought you had a sense of humor. That's the one I can tell.
And you're still friends.
I gave him back his shoe.
New shoes. Okay. Can you share?
Not here.
No. No. How about you? This went both ways.
Go on, Stacey.
Oh, I'm going to the, oh, okay, all right, okay, so then safer territory, Torah.
Oh, good.
Here's your Torah.
Do you all study Torah together? I know I've had some wonderful moments studying Torah with Norman. You study Torah with each other? You have a Torah moment you can share?
So I was always very jealous of my colleagues who had, I know especially Simcha in Chicago, had long-term groups, a chevra of folks that they would study Torah with on a regular basis. But it occurred to me a long time ago, we had a speaker at the synagogue, Leonard Fine, label Fine, and I remember him starting and saying, we're going to start with a word of Torah, a vort. And he shared a short story by Isaac Bashevis Singer. And I thought, how does this become a vort of Torah? And I asked him, and he said, well, you know, anything where you study and learn and think and evolve and grow, that's Torah in the broadest sense. And it occurred to me that really we have a group that studies Torah regularly. And it's a kind of an email Torah study group. Stacy spoke a few moments ago about what I think is special that we have. And central to that is that through all of these years, we are constantly back and forth with each other by email of whatever issues are on our mind. I have a thought about something. What do you think about this? I'm thinking of this program. Can you think of a way where it might work better? What are you going to do when we're faced with the conflict of this and this? I don't know how to resolve that. What have you done in your synagogue? And we go back and forth. I have my little tag for the group. It's my chevra, my group of friends, my buddies. I type in chevra, and we're off to the races with whatever our discussion is. And I thought recently there was a moment for me that was really a Torah moment. We had a discussion about whether it was appropriate to celebrate Purim on the closest Saturday evening. We had a couple of years in a row, recently as you probably recall, where it fell out on Saturday night. Isn't that perfect? Maybe this is something we should do all the time and say, look, it's not the most major of holidays. It's not exactly even a sober holiday. Why don't we take a little bit of liberty with it and move it to the closest Saturday and have the greatest response from the congregation? And we went around and around, and I realized after talking by email with my colleagues that I had to completely rethink my notion. It was a Torah moment because it was a conversation that was motivated by love of the tradition, love of our communities, and a desire to really freely express with each other what was on our minds. At the end of the conversation, the Torah that I walked away with was, I started off with one opinion, and I finished off with a completely opposite one.
I think it's, as we were sitting here, I realized that although we're very close friends, we have essentially never seen each other, quote unquote, be rabbis. Hardly ever. Because we went to rabbinic school by first name. We didn't call each other rabbi. That would have been fun. Rabbi Bob, nice to see you this morning in your blue jeans. Anyway, we didn't, and then we were all ordained, and we've all lived in different cities all through our entire rabbinate. So we don't even know each other as rabbis in one sense. We don't know exactly, we can imagine. We don't know how each other works and things like that, but we still know each other and learn from each other in a different kind of way. I would like to say Torah from Rabbi Cohen. This is an event that took place when Simcha had his birthday during a CCAR convention in Boston. So the three of us, because Elliot, you weren't there on that occasion, it was your birthday, and we decided we were going to go out, and Norman organized it, and we were going to go, it was South End, right? The South End of Boston, where there are like 100 Italian restaurants. By the way, the convention was in Boston. That was necessary for this all to work. Anyway, Norman said, I'm not going to remember it exactly, he knew someone who had either worked here or one of you who had lived in Boston at one point and had a friend, stop that, had a friend who knew a restaurant, whatever. So Norman was all set up. We were going to go to this particular restaurant out of 100, and we had the name of it, and I think the waitress too, the server, or something like that. Anyway, Norman finds the place. We get there, and he introduces himself, and the person remembers us. But what happened was extraordinary. This is Torah from Norman, and you all know this could happen only with Norman. We don't just say hello to the waitress and say who we are, and then I probably would have ordered that, would have been it. No. Norman chats with her. We learn about her family. We learn that someone in the family was ill. Norman has her sit with us, and we hold hands around the table, and we do Yivarechecha Adonai. We do a priestly blessing. We learned her entire life story. She's sitting with us. I think she brought us extra wine and extra hors d'oeuvres or whatever it was. And then to top it all off, it's his birthday, but they don't have desserts at this restaurant. Norman had made such a connection with her that she'd gone out the back down to another restaurant and brought us a cake from the other restaurant so we could sing happy birthday to Simcha. And you said, have yourself a rabbi, make yourself a friend, have yourself a customer, make yourself a rabbi. It was quintessential Torah of Norman, and just a perfect story. I think it exemplifies exactly who he is and what he can do for you, and I know he's done it 1,000 times for all of you.
I've traveled with Norman a great deal, and I know when I travel with Norman, I'm going to meet everybody. People talk about the division of the population in America, rich and poor, Republican and Democrat. But really, there's people who Norman knows and people who Norman doesn't know yet.
I'm getting a little serious now. This is very much fun. But Torah. Our congregation has lots of wonderful things that we do. We've ritualized them, and they become customs here. And a lot of those come from our conversations. Over the years, we share ideas. As Elliot says, emails. Before emails, it was phone calls. But hardly a week goes by.
Lighting Shabbat candles, that's one.
Hardly a week goes by. Now you can see what attracted me to Mark Shapiro. Hardly a week goes by when we're not corresponding or talking about some issue. But I know one of my favorite customs here, and Rabbi Lakas has grown to love it too, is right before the high holidays, many of you have a visit from either Rabbi Lakas or me. And it's not a visit that you want to have because it means you've lost someone in your family, a parent, a spouse, a sibling, God forbid, a child. And we bring you apples and honey, and with a little note in it about the coming year. And this has been going on here a long time, probably over 20 years, more than that. And it's an idea I got specifically from Rabbi Bob, from Simcha. And this will impress you the most is it wasn't his idea. It's an idea he got from the rabbi he worked with in Chicago many years ago. And to me, this is door la door. This is the Shalshelet HaKabbalah. This is the chain of tradition that links Jews everywhere, not just in our age now, and not just here in Minneapolis, but all over the world and through time. And the way it happens is because of teachers and rabbis and congregants and Jews seeking to connect with their tradition and find comfort and meaning. So when we make those visits, I think very much of my gratitude to Simcha and to my other classmates, because we share these ideas all the time. And I think the best of them are things that all of our congregations have benefited from. So while you have had me as your rabbi, in some ways you've also had them as your rabbis. And that's something that I feel strongly about with their communities as well. When I go there, I know their congregation because we sort of help each other serve it.
And speaking of those things, I now have, there was an issue long ago about what do you do with a non-Jewish spouse? How do they become involved in bar mitzvahs? I think most of us have kind of found a place for that. But from Norman, I'm not sure you're still doing it. I got the words for a blessing so that the Jewish spouse, at least in our context, does the Hebrew blessing. And you had a prayer for the non-Jewish spouse to say, and that's the prayer I use, which comes from you. And if it's said here, it's also said in Springfield because of you.
The sharing of learning is magnificent, and these are rabbis who've shared their learning in many, many different ways and venues. And one of the most impressive ways has been in this way. And I just want to show you all for a moment, because I'm convinced you have learned from them indeed, or certainly will. But this book, Gates of Shabbat, was written by Rabbi Mark Dov Shapiro. And how often I know I've opened up this book that sits on my shelf as a resource for me, and so the teaching continues. And we're going to give you this book by Stephen Bob, Rabbi Simcha Bob, called Go to Nineveh. And Go to Nineveh is about the book of Jonah, and specifically medieval Jewish commentaries on the book of Jonah. And we have, this one is written by Rabbi Norman M. Cohn, Jewish Bible Personages in the New Testament. This is unbelievable, how prolific they are and how talented. And Rabbi Elliot Strom, with the racy cover, has written a novel called Rabbi Run. And which one of you is running for president of the United States of America now? But this is available at Amazon and Kindle, yes. And Rabbi Strom is proud to have preached, taught, and studied. No, in any case, these extraordinary books that have been written by friends and colleagues, and I'd invite you, I don't want you to tout your own book, but if there's something you want to say about, okay, I thought there was a title. No, we'll leave that. Okay, but those books are all available, Amazon and Kindle, and I hope that the learning continues in that way. So, any last comments before I wrap up our evening? So, yes.
I know that Stacy had said that one of the issues that we might be thinking about is, what do we think may be Norman's greatest accomplishment? And I thought a lot about that, because it's easy to come up with a long and impressive list. It's incredible, I think, to sit here on an evening like this, in this incredible sanctuary, in this incredible building, with this room filled with clearly appreciative and adoring congregants. It's impossible to sit here without being really impressed in a wonderful way by the accomplishment of this congregation. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought the list of accomplishments is long and it's full. But for me, the accomplishment is this. When I first met Norman, how many years ago was that? 3 years ago. He was bright, energetic, funny, silly, great fun to be with, thoughtful, wise, creative, capable, passionate, and full of enthusiasm. And I think the greatest accomplishment that Norman has achieved in all of these years is he's still Norman. He is still the same person that we fell in love with back in Jerusalem. And it's a wonderful evening for us to see that you know that as well, and that you have benefited from it as well. Norman, your greatest achievement is with all of the incredible things that you've done, you've stayed true to yourself. And that's a gift to all of us.
You know, I agree 100%, 1,000%. I was sitting here in this beautiful sanctuary, and you all know how energetic Norman is, and passionate, and I can hear it in your voice sometimes. You are so full of commitment, all joking aside. This place didn't happen just by happenstance. It happened because of all the people who cooperated, but it happened because it's your passion and your dedication. And frankly, when all is said and done and the resumes are all tendered and whatever, and the building's less important than your passion, and I think all these people, this is your achievement, that you have touched these lives. I'm thinking on the invitation for this weekend, there's a picture of you holding that child, blessing that boy. I think in a way you've held every single person because of your humanity and your love and your dedication. You've held them all in your hands and in your heart. That's an achievement. And it's a real living Eitz Chaim, a real tree of life.
The Norman that you know is the Norman that we know. He's genuine. The energy, the enthusiasm, the intelligence, the concern for you is who he really is. I can kid around with him, and I kid around with him. It's who I am. But I appreciate you. And I know that you are rock solid. Facebook, in a way, put Norman out of business. It used to be, on my birthday, maybe my brother or sister would call maybe, but Norman. Norman never forgot a birthday. Now, Facebook, everybody knows what everybody's birthday is. But before the Facebook era, you could count Norman would call. And I think that small little act, that small modest act, is expressive of who you are. You care about other people, and you care enough about other people to do what you should do. You're a star. Better. Last time we were here honoring Norman, we put an ad in the ad book saying that Norman was the Roberto Clemente of the rabbinate. 5-tool player. And we mean it.
So I think that you all have demonstrated some very important things for us this evening, and one of them significantly has to do with that verse that's so important to you, Rabbi Cohn, where we say, "Aseh lecha rav ukaneh lecha chaver." If you're lucky, you'll find yourself a rabbi, and you'll get yourself a friend. Well, up here now, I can say it's also true. Aseh lecha chaver ukaneh lecha rav. You have had a great friend, and you have found, each of you for yourselves, a great rabbi. How blessed we all are. And on this evening of transition, honoring transition, where Rabbi Cohn will go from being the senior rabbi to the Rabbi Emeritus, and so much is unknown. One thing is known, which is that this family of friends will continue to be in your life as you will continue to be in ours. How richly we are blessed. Amen.
Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we'll gather again here for Shabbat morning services. You'll have the chance to hear each of these rabbis teach on their specialty. They'll be joined by Reverend Steve Tom, who will also teach on his specialty. And we look forward to being here with you then. Shabbat Shalom.